Blizzard's been making a lot of moves lately, and they're kind of in trouble. If you haven't been paying attention, Overwatch 2, one of the worst reviewed games right now, absolutely tanking. Diablo 4 had a really good launch, but they didn't deliver enough content to keep people in long enough to get to season 1. They're trying to hype season 2, having a lot of fixes, but it's taken them this long to fix the game, so they've lost a lot of people. So Diablo 4 is not doing well right now. Overwatch 2 is close to dead. So Blizzard's trying to shake things up and fix their reputation and hopefully not go under. Let's see what Baller News has to say about this.
But Blizzard are perhaps one of the most shameless companies in the entire industry, because they announced some pretty astounding news yesterday that is likely going to make like a brilliant future for them. And in the exact same breath, they announced, as they always do, more layoffs. So 10 months after he rejoined the Warcraft leadership team as creative advisor, Chris Metzen is back. He is back in a full role as the executive creative director of the Warcraft universe.
I wonder where the layoffs are, though, because I did hear that a lot of the initial development team for Diablo 4 is now gone, and they're now only have the Diablo 4 seasonal creative team moving forward. So I wonder where else in the company they're looking at layoffs, or how widespread it is throughout the company, right?
And this is pretty exciting for Warcraft fans. This is basically exciting for Blizzard as a whole, because Chris Metzen more or less is the face of Blizzard, right? You'll have seen a lot more of like Mike Morhaime, J. Allen Brack in the recent years and stuff like that, especially from a leadership position. But from a creative position, from a this is the guy who made the stuff I know, it's Chris Metzen. As much as people like Blizzard's games, I think what really drove people to them more were not just the stories, right? But the vibes, the atmosphere, the feelings.
The vibes.
Warcraft is
I'm here for the vibes.
People know Warcraft. They know World of Warcraft. StarCraft as well.
I mean, I will say, like, World of Warcraft had a very specific feel that was kind of unmatched for a long time. And even now, within the MMO space, a lot of companies try to capture what World of Warcraft had at the height during, like, Wrath of the Lich King. And it's so hard to get that atmosphere of multiple players, mechanics, engaging storyline, massive amounts of content, all to like kind of come together in perfect harmony the way World of Warcraft did it in those days.
With it, like, it's properly iconic. And Diablo with all of the hellishness to it, people love those. And it's pretty understood that being, senior vice president of story and franchise development for such a long time, Metzen was at the heart of it all, right? He is this 23-year veteran of Blizzard who was there from the very beginning. I think he joined, and the first game he worked on was a Justice League game for them, I believe. And he's basically also not just the face, he's also the voice of Blizzard. Iconic characters are him, Thrall. That's maybe the most iconic Warcraft character of all. I'd say that maybe Arthas Illidan. He's the hero, right? He is. You think of a heroic character, it's him shouting, it's him doing that growl. That's what he is, and that's exactly what Blizzard have been missing in a lot of their games recently. Even when Diablo 4 did a seemingly very good job of getting it, it still didn't really have the hanging around power that it needed. It didn't really inspire people to, in this like brand new way that.
I mean, like, summing up kind of like what he's getting at, I think it's really good for Blizzard because it's kind of a return to their roots, trying to get back to where they were when they engaged these audiences. And I think their newer content is missing a lot of that. Like Diablo 3 versus Diablo 4, Diablo fans really enjoy Diablo 3 over Diablo 4 right now. And Diablo 4 has to figure out how to carry on that franchise and win those people back over. Because at this point, they've lost so many people, they now have to win fan base back, which I would say is twice as hard as convincing them it's going to be good in the first place. So it's an uphill battle, right?
Those games back in the past did. And now that Metzen's back leading Warcraft, there's maybe a little bit of that to come. So you think about Blizzard for the past maybe 7 or 8 years, and it seems to have all gone downhill since then. It seems to be Legion being World of Warcraft's final expansion, where like the core original creative team were part of it. And then Overwatch, like its release, you know, obviously it's not all connected, but that's when Metzen left originally. And obviously we do have to talk about the whole workplace culture thing a little bit because, you know, obviously that was a big thing that happened a couple of years ago and has changed Blizzard irreversibly. But one of the things that's interesting is how much work did Chris Metzen do on Blizzard? How much was he like the creative force? How much did he actually drive things behind the scenes? And one of the things he's spoken about quite openly is that his desire to leave was mostly because of burnout. And it seems that more or less after he spent his time away, after he, you know, went on the Ouroboros source book for...
I mean, that's very responsible of him, but like, yeah, like facing burnout in such a like high development cycle and something that requires a lot of passion to give the right direction. It's nice of him to like self-reflect and like, I'm not going to be able to give it what it needs. And like, I am not feeling like this is where I need to go. Cause so many people try to push through burnout and that's a mistake 9 times out of 10. And it's just going to lead to like very subpar results. So him stepping out, maybe it recharged, reinvigorated him, and him coming back in might be able to like course correct to some degree, right?
War Chief Gaming, his own company, which is apparently a tabletop retelling of a world and campaign from his teenage years, which is one of those like feels kind of full midlife crisis-y, right? It's like I'm going to go back into my teenage years and write a source book and it's going to be cool. And that was largely successful and everyone like was happy to pay for it and stuff. But after that, they seem to have gotten quiet. But over in Blizzard since 2016, it seems that a lot of Chris Metzen's work was actually picked up by a man who's been referred in multiple places as his successor, Alex Afrasiabi. Well, in the 2021 revelations, he was named as a specific individual who had harmed people after he had left the company a year prior. And it seems like through a lot of scuttlebutt we're hearing back and forward across Blizzard, across, you know, different things, it seems like Afrasiabi may not have been a very effective successor to Metzen. It seems that maybe there were some wrong lessons learned. Maybe some of it was attitudes, maybe some of it was other things, but it seemed like that period of time between the actual company itself was in a pretty... almost not a dearth of creativity, you know, in terms of developers, but a dearth of creativity from vision. It seemed like the only people they had at the top were leaders who were interested in leading from a production perspective or from a more, you know, a corporate perspective instead of here's the
Right. I've talked about this more times than I can count. If you lead the creative, or companies in general now tend to lead with the business front instead of the creative front. And that leaves a product that isn't engaging to the end user. So now the business is struggling because they didn't allow the creative to take the forefront and develop something the end user wants to experience. I think at some point it was Steve Jobs who said, realistically, when you're looking at making something and getting maximum participation in a product, you have to lead with what the end user experience goal is. And once you have that end user experience goal, you build all the technology backwards to get it aligned with that end user experience. And gaming companies feel like they're focusing on business instead of creative, which leaves a worse end user experience, which puts pressure and makes the business side struggle because end users don't want to experience it. So this has to be reversed at some point to get back to these like creative driven and led game
thing that we want you to do. Here's the vision. Here's the art we're going to make. Everyone go for it. It seems they were a little bit more comfortable to go, what are we making? Products, I guess. We'll let the devs figure it out, whatever. Sometimes that can be better in certain cases. But for Blizzard, the thing that always defined them was this like really strong creative vision that like bled through everything they did. That seemed to suffer in that like downtime. And I don't believe they had a creative
I would agree with all of that.
Specifically, actually, you know, someone in that literal position since Afrasiabi's development. So then you think about Afrasiabi being gone and why, and you go, well, hang on, was Metzen involved in any of that? And right now he was not directly named in any of the allegations. And his personal apology was more or less, he had the privilege of not noticing, not engaging, not creating necessary space. So effectively, he kind of downplayed any connection he had with Afrasiabi and then basically went, he wasn't incriminated in anything. No one said he's ever done anything wrong, just that he didn't do quite the effective job as he should have as a leader in that case. So then in 2023, he came back as creative advisor for the Warcraft franchise, including World of Warcraft at first, and then moving on to other things, which obviously people are thinking, the other things, what's that about? Interesting. Are you going to do some movies? You're going to do some TV, things like that? And I believe on Twitter, Chris and Mike Ibarra, the president of Blizzard, basically talked about that pretty handily and said, maybe. There's maybe some plans, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Solid maybe.
I'm not going to tell you how far along they are. And then Metzen was like, hey, a movie would be cool too, which, you look at that being the time of, post Arcane's astounding success, post the original success of the early Witcher, looking at Castlevania as another example. There's clearly like a market for Blizzard stuff there if they actually do it with creative direction, which they now have in terms of, well, a creative director. As for Warcraft at the time, that was off the end of the Shadowlands expansion, which was a wake-up call for so many people, because that was not good. Not good in almost any feasible way. It wasn't good. So then that moved into Dragonflight. And Dragonflight has been substantially, improved so far in like...
I think with seasonal games and games that come out with expansions at the rate like Diablo and World of Warcraft and stuff like that goes, you can expect to have down seasons or down expansions and up seasons and expansions. It's hard to be so on point, so consistently 100% of the time. You're going to have these hills and valleys, but a lot of times those valleys are that wake up call that like, hey, they don't like the direction you went. How do you plan on fixing it and making a better product next time? Which creates the kind of waxing and waning of good content expansions and seasons, right?
Technically, and as a gameplay product and all those things, with like
not a Blizzard exclusive
with,
problem.
The openness to developers, with like the core details of gameplay, including class balance and changes like that, it has been a resounding success. Couple of shortfalls here and there. Still, it's not perfect yet, but one of the most divisive parts has been the creative direction. Obviously, we're very close to it, having the Warcraft channel and covering that in depth, where recently we've been covering a lot of basically community concerns that it's toothless. The Warcraft franchise doesn't have war in it anymore. People are very hungry for like not just gritty stories, not just stories that are, hey, this is dire for the sake of it.
They have to be engaging.
Here's some murder and pain and suffering. People want the kind of nuanced stuff. People want Cyberpunk as an example. The whole like the humanism and transhumanism idea of, are you a person? How is that your body? What happens if you replace different parts of your body, parts of your mind?
Right.
That's a really interesting thing for people to like delve into and engage with. And it's a far cry from what people are kind of calling World of Warcraft's current direction, which is in some cases people say Disneyfied or very cartoony. And Warcraft historically has been a little bit silly at times, but it always had the backbone of an orc screaming. It was always about sacrifice. It was always about, you think back to like the original story of Warcraft 3 and you think about Grom Hellscream, and he makes a heroic sacrifice to kill the demon that's been plaguing like his entire people. He dies in the effort and frees everyone else, even after this being basically his, just earlier, his second fall from grace. And it's all about these like strong heroic characters doing things that people can stand behind and rally behind and go, yeah, life sucks ass, but we can be that cool, so let's get after it. And I think that's what I think a lot.
Right, it's that engaging drive. You have to have it in the story. Why am I doing it? Or why do I think that I want to engage in it? And I mean, again, not a Blizzard only problem. I think there's been a lot of games recently that just have failed to get that full engagement or depth of reason and why behind it that makes players say, I am diving full force into this, right?
A lot of people were like super excited by, and that was Metzen, right? That was what Metzen wanted. It was to be fairly reductive. It's like heavy metal and beer. Obviously that goes a little bit too far sometimes into like trope territory, but that's the kind of thing that people miss in the industry, especially in like Blizzard, especially in like Overwatch 2. You see every cinematic is
Overwatch
dramatic
2,
orchestral swell, and we're all together now and we've beaten the bad guy, and there's very little like nuance in terms of any, not even just morality, but just there's nothing to be interested by or excited by. It's all like a false veneer of emotion. It's just like, hey, be
right. And like Overwatch 2 is fighting against the already bad PR of people wanted a story mode and a way to like play characters in like single player type or 4-player co-op where you like get your heroes, you level them up, and you have this like expansion to that they kind of hinted at, and it never came to fruition. And then on top of that, without that added bonus content, it's just the same as Overwatch 1, and people are left with, why does Overwatch 2 even exist? This could have been a seasonal patch or expansion, but you charge us full freight. So Overwatch 2 is fighting the PR of feeling like a money grab, not delivering what it promised, and now people aren't engaged in the story. So like there's a lot of why does it exist and why am I here?
Happy now or something. So that was like the major problem with Dragonflight as far as creativity goes. But now Metzen has been working on World of Warcraft projects for 10 months already. He's now got this promotion to executive creative director. He's now basically like officially in the driver's seat, which implies to me that this is something they want to have known.
It could
before
help
they
a
move
lot
into BlizzCon. They want BlizzCon to be very, very hyped up. They want that to be a massive moment for Metzen's back, Warcraft's back. You know, you get all of that, like all of that energy. You get Metzen on stage and he goes, "For the Horde!" and everyone goes completely mental. That's the kind of stuff people want to hear. That's the energy Warcraft had. That's the energy Blizzard had. And correlation,
I mean, it's a big move.
Aside, you kind of go, well, Blizzard under Metzen, cool stuff. Blizzard not under Metzen, not cool stuff. And that's reductive. It's also kind of true. It's also like an observed effect. So whether you see this as a big exciting moment for the Blizzard we knew coming back in the creative direction, obviously they have a lot of other things to contend with. There's a whole load of
the other problem is like, how long will it take for this to course correct? Like season 2 Diablo 4 almost already out. Metzen coming into that role should probably not affect season 2. How far into the next World of Warcraft expansion are they development wise? Like how long is it going to take for his presence to trickle down into the content? And are people going to give him that time, or is his first project back, even though he didn't have a whole lot of hands in it, going to kind of set the pace, right? Because these things don't happen overnight. These things are already in development that he's coming into close to completion and has to try to correct. So like, how much are people going to react to that instantly?
And a lot of things have been doing better. You know, Metzen being back isn't going to suddenly mean that Diablo 4 seasonal content is suddenly more exciting. And that's one of the things people have been talking about with issues recently. I mean, if you want to see it as at least an attempt, we know the vibes are off. How do we get the vibes back? Let's get the man who built them in the first place. Let's pull him back on the project and get something going. Then at least
it's a good start, right?
Obviously at the top of this video, I did say it was very Blizzard of them. It was Blizzard. Blizzard do it again. Blizzard have done what they always done every single time. They use this to bury some bad news. Now, it's not as colossal as usual where they would go, okay, well, here's 800 layoffs. That was the big story. This one is just a little bit more kind of just corporation to corporation things where, so from Kotaku's Ethan Gatch, 10 people are laid off within the Hearthstone team. Activision statement, organizational changes were made to the Hearthstone team. As a result, a small number of roles have become redundant. We want to thank these employees for their many contributions. How did you thank them, Activision Blizzard? These affected staff have claimed in their posts that no notice was given ahead of layoffs whatsoever, or no effort to find alternative placements within the company, which is usually like, that's the show of good faith, right? That's the thing you do that's, we actually want you around, because there's a number of reasons to like take people off Hearthstone. That's fine. You go, well, Hearthstone's not making enough money. As much as you could talk about, well, how much is enough money? Is this more line god pandering? Is this, is this just line god?
I want to say though, like he talks about like they didn't look to put them in other positions across the company. But if the entire company is laying off, like every game and sector is losing people, how are you going to fire 20, 30 people from Diablo 4 and then move someone from Hearthstone to Diablo 4? You're basically saying that initial contribution of the entire Diablo 4 people that got fired is less meaningful than the people at Hearthstone. Or same with like if World of Warcraft lost so many developers or a technical server guy, and then they moved a server guy from Hearthstone to World of Warcraft. Like, which one do you try to relocate? If the company is across the board doing layoffs, how do you try to preserve the jobs of 10 people just from Hearthstone? It doesn't make sense. The whole company is shrinking. There's nowhere to move these people into positions because it would instantly create the argument the other way around. If you move someone from Hearthstone to Diablo 4, why couldn't a person from Diablo 4 just as easily been moved to Hearthstone or kept their job? Right? It's the grander problem of a rising tide lifts all ships. And if jobs are slowly going away as a whole within the company, that ship is going to fall a little bit and there's nowhere to place those people.
A bit red today, quick sacrifice blood on the altar. You look at Hearthstone, they've clearly had trouble monetizing it in the way they've wanted to. They've clearly been doubling down on monetization recently with like not quite full whaling, but kind of getting closer to whaling.
Diablo 4's monetization was
substantially bigger,
overpriced.
Like, cosmetics and things like that, more avenues for monetization. They're clearly having some sort of issues there, which kind of brings me to, okay, well, what's the good version of layoffs? The good version of layoffs is, quite ironically, as far as we understand, there could be more to the story that we don't know. But think about Forspoken, right? Forspoken came out after years of development, and that was a flop. That definitely didn't sell anywhere near as much as Square Enix had wanted to. And that was under Luminous Studios, which is
underperformed.
And we don't know if everyone stayed or people were moved, but a lot of the reporting from the shuttering of Luminous Studios was the entity, Luminous Studios, is being dissolved. However, developers are just being shuffled back into Square Enix as a whole, which goes to show they go, well, it wasn't the developer's fault, right? It was.
But Square Enix had somewhere to put them. That was my point before. The whole company's downsized. You have nowhere to move them. So Square Enix, that studio dissolved, but Square Enix had other projects to move them to that they weren't downsizing at the time. And that's important to like notice. And a lot of people said an earlier point he made was they didn't get notice. Well, sometimes the problem is if you give a bunch of people 10-day notice, 2-week notice, they now feel slighted. And if they feel that the company has wronged them, but they still have access to all the servers and all the data and everything within that for 2 weeks, they could do an emotional reaction to it and cause harm to the product while they were on that 2 weeks. And to tell someone you have 2 weeks notice, but your job is to now sit in the break room, that doesn't make sense either. It's a lot cleaner, a lot faster for the company and the individual. I'm sorry, we can't keep you around. Here's your severance. Hopefully, if you ever need a review, you know, we will give you positive like reviews going forward, but your services are no longer needed here. Have a good day. When I got laid off at the start of COVID from a company, a warehouse, they came to me at the middle of the day and said, hey, this is your last day. You're going to be wrapping up soon. Like when you're done today, we can't keep you on. The company's going in a different direction. And I was like, well, shit. And like, I was kind of around the shop with like, I don't know what to do. And I really don't give a shit about this job because like, they just fired me. Like, this is my last day. And he came to me at lunch or a couple minutes later. And he's like, actually, you know what? You can go ahead and take off. You're getting full day pay, but you're done now. Like sometime shortly after lunch, you just go home. You're getting the pay for the rest of the day, but it's over. And like, that is the easiest thing for the company and the individual. It sucks, but it's real life.
It was the organization's fault for not like targeting the game correctly, whatever, maybe production issues. For whatever reason, that game flopped. I know people have a lot of opinion on that, but it's clearly a case of they went, okay, well, we're not going to punish our devs. Why would we do that? We need those to make our games. But then the Blizzard version is, oh, sorry, you've been working for us for like as much as 18 years. Bye. Nice knowing you. Thank you very much. You can keep your Blizzard ring and your Blizzard sword and your
Who do
Blizzard
you
tank
save and who do you let
cheap
go?
gifts they
Like,
get.
that's the
You keep
problem.
those, that's fine. But another job? Nah. Assistants getting placed? Nah. Any warnings you can sort your life out? Nah, because you're just a fucking fly. You're just a little pest. You're a little pest on her balance sheet. It sucks. They could have found placements. Hearthstone people, like, I know.
I don't think they could have done placements,
sure,
though.
because he openly posted.
Every
on
other
LinkedIn about it
department
and
just got downsized, right? If every other department's getting downsized, there's nowhere to move them. That's my point. And like the no prior notice, there's a lot of reasons why companies don't like to give prior notice. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair, but what's the company going to do with the individual? Like, you don't want to give them access to all the systems so that they can kind of destroy your product, but you don't want to pay someone 2 weeks to sit in a break room. You give a severance, you make it clean, and hopefully it works out, right?
I've been saying a couple of things about this. One is that Hearthstone specific, right? It seems like Hearthstone might be just being going the way Heroes of the Storm, because the esports stuff got canned a little while ago, or at least got turned down substantially, and that's cost cutting, right? So the next thing then is for the game to go
esports in
into
general are
closer to
not doing
maintenance
well.
mode. And it hasn't seemed that's the case, and some of this might be fear mongering on
It's a
some
huge
ends,
money
but it definitely
sink.
feels a little bit like this is the people who were fired seem to be those who could be responsible for the future. It seems to be that way. Now, it could be genuinely this is a good time to remove low performers and, you know, get them to move on. And I think that's obviously understandable if you're paying someone and they just aren't doing their job. You know, as long as you take the correct legal measures to like sort them through that and talk about it, then layoffs are fine. But because it's organizational changes, small number of roles, and it's Blizzard, everyone has to jump to the same conclusion. Hearthstone's entering maintenance mode. You're cost cutting. You're cost cutting because Lion God isn't happy enough, and you don't even have the common decency to say, "Oh, hey, you've worked for us for years, and you worked in this game."
But at the same time, if the company has to cut costs, it's not all about, like, companies have a fiducial responsibility to shareholders, and like people act like them making money is a problem, but that's the only reason companies exist. But if their profits are dwindling, but their cost of development is not going down with decreased profits, the company will soon be in the red, go upside down, and then everyone loses their job. So when companies do these layoffs, it's to get runway, to try to course correct, to get back to where they need to be, to have the staff that they had earlier. Like, at some point, companies have to preserve themselves to preserve as many jobs as they can. Because the alternative is they're not allowed to lay anyone off, but they keep losing money. Now they're losing money month over month. Company goes under. Instead of 800 people lost their job, the entire company with 10,000 employees is gone. Doesn't exist. 10,000 people are out of their jobs instead of 800 6 or 7 months ago. These are very real decisions that companies have to make. Diablo 4 is underperforming. Overwatch 2 is underperforming. Hearthstone is underperforming. Blizzard is in a very tight spot. And you're going to belittle the company's position to they're just trying to save a dime for profits and they don't care about the people at all. Like, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? Unfortunately, in this case, people lost their job, but it's for the company to try to figure out how to course correct. I don't want to be a guy just like corporate shilling, but you have to be realistic about the situation. And if 800 people now gives you a year to course correct instead of 4 months, you do 800 now to save the other 10,000 jobs, if that's what it is. I don't know the exact numbers, but that's just how companies operate. They have to have runway so that when they see a problem, they can fix it. And if they don't have enough runway, they're going to take care of it the quickest way possible, which is payroll, to increase the runway to fix the problem.
You want to go get a place on the Warcraft team, as an example, because that's scaled up, right? Do you want to go work on Diablo for anything? No, it's just to hell with you. And that's not necessarily horrible, but it just doesn't feel right. And it feels like they've buried it under this like news. They went, hello everyone, the original creator of Blizzard is back, everyone. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to be so happy. Look forward to Classic Plus and Cataclysm Classic and the next World of
I
Warcraft.
mean, the creator coming back is another example
TV shows
trying to
and movie,
correct the
and
ship.
the survival game is going to be cool and everyone's going to love it, and it's not going to be out in 7 years and it's not going to be way behind the times at all. No, we're Blizzard. We do things right now. Also, we don't treat our staff like humans because they're not to them. That's what it feels like. That's every time this happens.
That
it feels
is
a little bit like leadership at Activision Blizzard are the
disingenuous.
scum of-
I hate the argument he's
That's
making.
what you can't help but think every single time you see this happen.
Actually, like, loathe the argument he's making because he's looking at it from a very micro perspective, and the company's looking at the macro of their entire employee base and their entire book system. So they have their entire financials to look at, and they have to take care of all of their employees. But this guy's looking at it from the lens of one individual worker. It's a very disingenuous argument to say the company treats everyone like hell because they fired 10 people.
Time. And it's endemic throughout the industry in a lot of cases. Obviously, I talked about the example of Luminous Productions being seemingly a good enough version of that.
Companies exist to make money. I'm sorry.
With this is,
that's the only reason they exist.
Like, oh, well,
and a lot of people make money because they make money.
The actual industry itself is in a really dark place for people trying to get hired, where there's a lot of people who are becoming senior.
The industry has been like this for a very long time. My sister works as quality control for a game studio. She is a graphic designer. She went to graphic design school, and she tried so many different ways to break into the industry. She got hired to do marquees for a casino to get experience in design and marquees and animation. She went to studio after studio. She couldn't get in to the industry for years until she got offered a quality control spot. And now she's the manager of a quality control team, but she's not in graphic design. She's not in animation. She's not in creative. It took her 7 to 10 years to get into the industry to not be in the spot in the industry she was trying to get into. This is not new for the industry. And if he tries to paint it like the industry just started to get harder for people to get into, that is going to be an outright lie. A lot of people want to work in the game industry, and the game industry doesn't have a ton of jobs.
Senior level, and they can't find senior
it's a
level
dream
jobs
job
anymore
to
because
work
so much
and develop
of
games,
projects
right?
in the industry seem to be a handful of seniors leading a legion of outsourcing talent or juniors who are just kind of not treated like they should be there forever, not treated like future investments, just treated like disposable resources to get the next actual thing done. And obviously that's changing along the industry with...
That's called a development cycle.
Rockstar,
it sucks,
based
but...
on like some reporting we've heard, they have improved their game. They've like completely changed their culture in a couple of years since they were like last called out for all the stuff that went wrong there. And it just seems like Blizzard are so far behind and just, yeah, we're going to treat our staff callously. We're going to, obviously historically underpay them. We've heard reports of that improving. Although again, you go, well, is that out of necessity because you aren't getting hires? Or is that because you think it's the right thing to do? And I think you look at the historical, moral fiber of Activision Blizzard, and it's not up to a corporation to be entirely moral. Like, obviously, you've got a job to do and you want to make stuff, fine. But you have to do it sustainably. Because if you don't do it sustainably, what's going to happen? We're not going to have an industry, at least not in the same way, in a couple of years. So that's Blizzard, right?
I mean...
That's Blizzard. They've done Blizzard things again.
Based on all the arguments he made, he should want the industry standard as it is to die now anyway. Like, he made a lot of arguments about how bad the industry is. So he should want it to, the unsustainable part of it to die out and go away. But that would hurt way more people than the 10 people they fired.
Their future on a creative level looks like it could be incredibly bright. It looks like so many problems that they had, so many problems that they, battled with for years and years now, could be in some capacity solved by them understanding why they needed to bring Chris Metzen back. We've yet to see if it's going to amount to anything, but we will definitely find out at BlizzCon if this is a meaningful thing or not. At BlizzCon, we will.
I feel like it is. The company obviously knows they have to fix a reputation.
Games, are they exciting? Are they culturally what people want to play, or are they not? Because they haven't had a win like that that's carried through since Overwatch. Diablo 4 wasn't bad. Diablo 4 had a very successful launch, an astounding one.
They had an amazingly good
has
launch.
Some capacity for it. They
just pissed it away by not having the content that they thought they were going to have or should have had, right? Blizzard's in a bad spot. I don't think anyone is unaware of that, and they have a lot to like course correct, and they're trying to fix the ship. They know that things are not going the way they need to do, so they're shaking it up. They're bringing in someone from their past that has had a lot of success to fix a lot of the issues that hopefully he can fix or get them back to their roots and deliver what people want. There's the link to the video. It was an okay video. I really like Billowar News. That one, I think he kind of missed the point and he was a bit unfair to the company as a whole, but there is a lot of information in there about what Blizzard is doing and what they're going through. So hopefully that all washes out, but I think he was very unfair to Blizzard as a company for trying to find a way to increase runway and continue to exist. Does it suck for the employees that got fired? It really does. But it doesn't suck for all the employees who didn't get fired, and hopefully Blizzard can course correct and not everyone loses their job. That's the goal, at least for the company. And I think that's what they're trying to address, is not completely tanking their entire company.
Like and subscribe, do this stuff. You want all that? All of that. Hey there, it's Skeg Broggy. Thanks for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and follow me here on Twitch for more awesome content. Link is in the description.